Welcome back. National budget makers in Sri Lanka usually escalate the cost from the previous year to arrive at spending estimates for the new year. Critics of the system argue a move to activity-based budgeting would lead to a more transparent and accountable system.
Researchers say the national budget lacks financial rationale since nobody demands to know what kind of an output would be generated from spending in any particular area.
It's based on past expenditure trends and the inflation and likely additional cost expected in the following year, and it's based on that rather than on financial rationality, whether that is the best way of doing executing a particular project or whether the particular project provides value for money or what the ultimate beneficiaries of a particular project gets out of this additional project or additional expenditure. Nobody questions that. It's taken for granted.
Muthukrishna Sarvananthan, the principal economic researcher at the Point Pedro Institute of Development in the northern Jaffna Peninsula, was speaking at a seminar on accountability and transparency in public budget making. Unlike in the private sector, there is no comparison between the actual and the budgeted results achieved, and no one is held accountable for non-compliance of the stated budgeted spending.
It's also important that the actual figures are presented against the budgets. Now the actual outturns very often are presented but with no reference to the initial budget. There is no variance analysis. We don't see that. I don't know whether anybody prepares that, but at least it's not shared in a transparent manner. Now I wish the private sector also operated that way, but unfortunately every time we present a figure, an actual, we are forced to compare that with the budget. And you have to explain why the actual is not in line with the budget.
Manjula De Silva, who heads a private sector insurance company, has to account for performance of the organization to shareholders who will replace him if they are unhappy about how things are progressing.
If the government wants to allocate some expenditure for different ministries, different departments of different purposes, different projects, everything had to go through the cabinet have to approve, and also the parliament has to approve it. Similarly, on the revenue side, whenever government wants to impose direct or indirect taxes, everything has to be get passed by the parliament, in addition to getting approval of the cabinet. Even within the executive in Sri Lanka, it's very top-down kind of approach where Ministry of Finance is the almost overriding sort of authority on in the preparation, and it's only a very few senior bureaucrats get involved in the drafting. Although there is something called a Department of National Budget. I have interviewed them for some other purpose at the beginning of this year. A lot of information even they themselves don't know. In fact, because its power is concentrated under the Treasury Secretary.
Unlike in other countries, Sri Lanka doesn't have a parliamentary committee that looks into budget-making process. The president, who holds the portfolio of finance minister, also cannot be held accountable for the budget.
The president is not accountable to parliament. President is above law. You cannot challenge the president. So it's dangerous. On the one hand, the constitution gives the legislature the primacy in terms of budget or other financial control of the government finances to the legislature. But to me, it is taken away by the president by holding that position, and therefore making him or her immune from the law and any kind of repercussions.
Though parliamentary oversight committees like COPE or the Parliamentary Committee on Public Enterprise and COPA or the Committee on Public Accounts are active, their sitting are not open to public.
Another major issue in terms of transparency and accountability of these parliamentary oversight committees and also the Auditor General Department is that, especially COPE and COPA, is that it is not open to public, it is not open to media, like in many other democracies. It is held in camera, so therefore you really don't know what goes on.
Sri Lanka was ranked in the bottom half, scoring 47% in the benchmark index published by the Centre for Budget and Policy Priorities that ranks countries on the openness of the budget making and monitoring process. The survey ranks 59 countries with high percentage scores denote a more transparent budget-making process that is followed up. Publishers of the index say Sri Lanka only provides some information to the public, which is why it's ranked in the bottom half with its 47% score. The ranking depends on the country's ability to issue 7 key budgetary documents, which includes the pre-budget statement, executive budget proposal, citizens' budget, in-year, mid-year and year-end reports and the auditor's reports. Inadequate time for debate or to respond to the proposed suggestions, diminishing quality of parliament debate and non-compliance makes it questionable if transparency or valuable contribution is being.
There's no mechanism to really penalize authorities, bureaucrats or politicians for non-compliance of that. But it's law is passed by the parliament, whoever was in government at the time, but it was voted by the opposition as well. And so it was passed. So if the parliamentarian themselves does not, if the government does not obey its own laws, then how do you expect the general public to do it?
Activists urge government to sign landmine banning treaty, arguing that it will also force the LTTE to give up using anti-personnel mines. Details after the break.